Hello, everybody. Nice to see you here today by video. So it's greetings from Phillip Island in Australia. Hello to you all in Japan. I'm very grateful to be asked to present a paper or article for the conference and also to give a speech. I apologize from my heart that I couldn't be there in person with you, but I'm very happy that you agreed to me doing a video, a pre-recorded video. And so the International Conference, the Buddhist Conference, auspicious event, the concept of Buddhism, peace, and yoga in 2024, organized by the World Buddhist Mission, World Yoga and World Yoga Community. And so, like I said, I'm very happy to be involved, even though it's from a distance at the moment. And the article that I presented for you is called Nip Negativity in the Bud, which means to recognize when any negativity arises in your mind and stop it right there rather than letting it grow and so forth, okay? And so what I'll do today is I'll read you the article. It's quite short. I kept it quite short for good reason, because I'm sure that you have many papers to be presented at the conference and so on. And so I'll read it to you and then may add a few extra little bits for you as well. Okay, so nip negativity in the bud. Let me put my reading glasses on. Getting older by the day. Anger only ever causes suffering. We should eradicate it whenever it arises, just as we don't hang on to rain when the sun comes out. All things pass. Replace anger with acceptance, patience, appreciation, and loving kindness. We should do our very best to protect our mind by enthusiastically practicing the four great efforts as taught by the Buddha, to eradicate any unwholesome thoughts that have already arisen, to stop any new unwholesome thoughts from arising, to give rise to wholesome thoughts, and to maintain wholesome thoughts that have already arisen. The Buddha said, with sustained effort and sincerity, discipline, and self-control, the wise become like islands which no flood can overwhelm. When mental sensations and thoughts arise, don't cling to them or follow them or turn them into something bigger than they are, for they are simply conditioned habitual tendencies. Be proactive and nip them in the bud by just letting them go naturally, rather than being reactive, reacting to them and then reacting to the reaction, and so on and so forth. For instance, if we let the weeds in the garden grow, unrestrained and uncontrolled, the size and amounts of the weeds continually increase and become overwhelming. Likewise, if our thoughts and feelings are left to grow, unrestrained and uncontrolled, they will intensify and eventually become overwhelming. We experience the world through our senses, which gives rise to mental sensations or feelings, which are either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. We then recognize or perceive these sensations and normally then impulsively react, which in turn leaves a karmic imprint on our consciousness. We should create what I like to call a buffer zone between the perception of the sensation and the impulsive reaction. In other words, allow ourselves the opportunity to not impulsively react. In this way, we can protect ourselves from creating negative karma. To give a brief example, if we bump our head on something hard, generally the sensation we experience would be unpleasant. We then perceive this unpleasant sensation and impulsively react with frustration or even fully blown anger, which in turn leaves a negative karmic imprint on our consciousness. However, if we create a buffer zone between our perception of the unpleasant feeling and our impulsive reaction, we will avoid creating negative karma. Enjoy your buffer zone. Nip negativity in the bud before it becomes overwhelming. So I think most of you will understand what I'm saying there. And in relation to the effort to maintain the wholesome mind, this relates obviously to number 6 in the Eightfold Path, or the first of the higher trainings in meditation, the right effort or right enthusiastic perseverance. I like to say often you should build a fence if you live on the edge of a cliff before you fall over the edge. This is like practicing the four great efforts to keep the wholesome state of mind, to encourage new wholesome states of mind, to relinquish unwholesome states of mind if they have already arisen, and to protect our mind from having unwholesome states of mind arise. Unwholesome states of mind such as anger and so on. Of course, anger is known as the most destructive of emotions. It is said that we destroy so much good karma or good merit, positive potential that we've created through many lifetimes, even in just one moment of anger, if we act out upon it. And then, of course, it reinforces itself and continues to reinforce itself, become thicker and thicker. So we should nip it in the bud. As soon as we recognize it, that it is arising here and now, we should nip it in the bud, stop it there and then. Now, we can do this by replacing it with the good states of mind, such as loving kindness, patience, and so on. But also we can apply the teachings of emptiness and no self to it. For who is the person who is being angry? Who is the person they're being angry towards, or the object? What is anger? Actually, I like to say that our negative emotions, especially, even our positive emotions, actually are very shy. Because as soon as we pay pure awareness to them, as soon as we look at them, we're mindful, we're aware, we're conscientious, they melt away. I remember many years ago, people used to count to 10 when they got angry. This is kind of like that, really, isn't it? Taking their mind off the anger, off the object of their anger, and so on, and placing their mind on something that is more neutral. Okay, so you can replace the negative qualities with the good qualities, as mentioned, loving kindness, forgiveness, and so on. But also you can apply the teaching of emptiness, even if it's only a concept right now. You can apply that in your daily lives. There's that anger. What does it really mean? Where does it come from? What is it? It's not really existent, ultimately. And who is this person that is being angry? And so on, okay? And so if I continue to go through the article, so anger only ever causes suffering. We should eradicate it whenever it arises, just as we don't hang on to rain when the sun comes out. All things pass. So all things are impermanent. So impermanence, the law of impermanence, doesn't just mean negatives. Actually, it can be positive too, can it? You actually can change for the better. And also, let's say it's raining in the mornings and raining really big. You can't go out for a walk, but then the sun comes out and you go for a walk. You forgot about the rain now. You let it go. So it's like this with the anger and the negative emotions. You can replace the anger with acceptance, patience, appreciation, and loving kindness. And I've already mentioned the second paragraph, which is we should do our very best to protect our minds by enthusiastically practicing the four great efforts as taught by the Buddha, and so on. The Buddha said, with sustained effort and sincerity, discipline and self-control, the wise become like islands which no flood can overwhelm. And so that's with the examples I gave of the weeds in the garden. If we let them grow, if we don't pull them out, if we don't sort of rectify the problem, then actually it becomes overwhelming. But if we apply this great effort, if we apply the Dharma practice, the meditation practice based on morality, and the wisdom practice, the training in, then actually we can overcome these mental weeds, if you like. They won't become overwhelming and overwhelm us. I actually did some weeding in the garden this morning. And so we had a lot of weeds in the vegetable garden. And I had to spend quite a bit of time out there, make the effort, but do it patiently. You know, you don't have to do everything so quickly. And sometimes when we have the real negative habits that we've reinforced over many, many lifetimes, or even just this lifetime, sometimes it takes a little bit more effort, a little bit more time to let them go, depending on how thick the habit is. It's like a knot. If you tie a knot up, you know, very tight, it's a little bit more difficult to undo. Or if there's lots of knots on top of each knot, a little bit longer, a little bit more difficult to undo. This is like the mental afflictions that we have that are being reinforced over time and are really, really strong and really thick. It's going to take a little bit more time, a little bit more effort. But remember this, that even if you want to walk around the whole world right now, you only take one step at a time. Breathe one breath at a time. And if you do this continually with great patience and effort and so on, the other parameters, then you will achieve your goal of walking all the way around the earth. So the next little bit I mentioned here is when mental sensations and thoughts arise, don't cling to them or follow them. Don't grasp at them, you know. Don't try to force them away either. Don't turn your back on them. That's like turning your back on a fire. It's just going to get worse. Or deny them, just like that, right? You have to face the mental afflictions, realize what it is, and then let it go. Apply the antidotes. Then we don't cling to them or follow them or turn them into something bigger than they really are, for they are simply conditioned habitual tendencies, conditioned mental habits. Be proactive and nip them in the bud. So practicing the Dharma is being proactive. If your mind is reactive all the time, reacting to all the emotions and so on, and mental stimuli and so on, then actually all you're going to do is reinforce the negativities, reinforce the clinging and the grasping and the attachment. Okay? So be proactive and practice the Dharma. By letting them go naturally, rather than being reactive, reacting to them, then reacting to the reaction, and so on and so forth. For instance, and this is the example I was mentioning before, for instance, if we let the weeds in the garden grow unrestrained and uncontrolled, the size and amounts of the weeds continually increase and become overwhelming. Likewise, if our thoughts and feelings are left to grow unrestrained and uncontrolled, they will intensify and eventually become overwhelming. So I mention here the 5 skandhas or 5 aggregates that make up a living being. And I mentioned the form, the feelings, the thoughts, the impulses, the consciousness. Or you could say it a different way, our physicality or corporality, and then our mentality, which is made up of mental sensations or feelings, perception or the first thought, and then the mental formations, which has 2 parts. It's from the past, our habitual tendencies from the past, from the karma we've created, and also in the moment here, it has a sort of an element of volition or intention, which can either be wholesome, unwholesome, or neutral. And then, of course, we have the consciousness. So we leave the imprint, the karmic imprint on the consciousness. And so anyway, I mentioned this, that if we bump our head on something hard, normally we may feel pain. And then if your mind is untrained, then you're going to react, probably with anger or at least frustration. And you're going to leave a karmic imprint on your consciousness at that moment. Okay, so I mentioned here that we experience the world through our senses, which gives rise to the mental sensations or feelings, which are either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And then we recognize or we perceive these sensations. Normally then impulsively react, leaving a karmic imprint on our consciousness. But we should create what I like to call a buffer zone. So you could say this is the subtitle of this article, the buffer zone, utilizing a little bit of humor with the words, but creating a gap between our perception of the experience and the feeling and then our reaction. If we can do this, we will save ourselves from creating the negative karma and reinforcing the bad habits over and over again. Okay, so if you take anything out of this, only a few words, then nip negativity in the bud, and by creating a buffer zone in between your perception of your experience and your reaction to this. Be more proactive. So I like to call it the buffer zone. It's between the perception of the sensation and impulsive reaction. In other words, allow ourselves the opportunity to not impulsively react. And in this way, we can protect ourselves from creating this negative karma. Okay? And basically, I gave you the example already of bumping the head or any sort of unpleasant feeling or perception that you may have of that feeling. So if we create this buffer zone, then we protect our mind. This is, once again, an example I can use is building a fence if you live on the edge of the cliff. Protect your mind from being unwholesome. Give rise to wholesomeness. Enjoy the buffer zone. So we should be joyful in our practice, enthusiastic with our effort. So the 2 elements there of the great effort, isn't it? The perseverance and the enthusiasm. And so nip negativity in the bud before it overwhelms you. And so I think that's all from me. Once again, I thank you very much for inviting me to be involved. And just before I finish, I will do dedication of merit's prayer. And so, due to this merit, may we soon attain the enlightened state of the Buddha, so that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious bodhicitta not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. And may the precious view of shunyata, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. And in Japanese, Namo Kie Butsu, Namo Kie Ho, Namo Kie So. We take refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in the Dharma, we take refuge in the Sangha. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Sanghaya. Thank you very much. Good luck with everything.